This is interesting. The governor did sign an 11th-hour water compromise bill to address California's water crisis. Lawmakers worked out a $7.5 billion deal. Will not be spent, though, unless voters approve the bond on November's ballot. Big dispute was essentially over the amount of money designated for new dams and reservoirs, but they did compromise. Republicans wound up getting $2.7 billion total for water storage. $7.5 billion is the total deal here. The bond was unanimously approved in the state Senate. 77-2 was the vote in the Assembly. So wide approval for this. Lawmakers say the bond also addresses groundwater management, water treatment, flood protection, and other investments designed to protect California's water supply during the prolonged droughts that we occasionally have, like the one we have now. Voters will ultimately have the final say on this one on November 4th. Lawmakers seem optimistic that they've cut the waste required to get a yes on this bond measure. Let's find out.
I think, first of all, just by the vote, you see there was bipartisan support across the aisle. There's only 2 no votes in both houses. That's historic in itself. But more importantly, we have a bond that will finally put some water in some reservoirs. We've had about 5 bonds with $19 billion over the last 15 years, and there hasn't been really storage. So this is historic in itself.
Well, we felt this was an opportunity for real storage and real water, but that also takes real money. So to start at $2 billion was not acceptable.
Governor Brown wanted the water bond to be delta neutral, so any action on his plan for the twin tunnels would not be impacted by the vote, and actually vice versa. Didn't want the tunnel to impact the vote on the bond. And we're joined now by Congressman John Garamendi, who represents much of our viewing area here in Northern California. Thank you for coming in, Congressman.
Good to be here.
Appreciate it. Boy, it's such a big issue, and we have so little time. But the Republicans are really pushing for more spending for water storage. Does this mean, is there ever going to be a new dam built in California?
There has to be.
Yeah.
There has to be. My colleague, Republican Doug Lamoff, and I are proposing and working hard in the federal side on the Sites Reservoir, about 40 miles north of here, off-stream, not on the rivers, but off-stream. Very important, very big reservoir, 2 million acre-feet, and it should be built. We also need the aquifers. In fact, about 18 months ago, I proposed a water plan for all California. This bond act covers almost every element of that water plan, and by the way, you don't need the tunnels. Spending $25 billion and not getting a gallon of new water, that's real waste. Bond act is good. We need to do it.
Interesting. The dynamic with the governor, who does not predictably go with whatever the Democratic legislature wants to do here, he was instrumental in paring it down to $7.5 billion. Are you happy with how all this money is slated to be spent?
I think it's a pretty good deal. First of all, it doesn't affect the tunnels. The tunnels are a separate issue. Yeah. They should never build those tunnels. A huge waste, $25 billion. Here you're talking about just $7 billion, or $7.5 billion. So, yes, all of the things, water recycling, conservation, water storage, both surface and aquifer, all of those are critically important elements in any water plan going forward. And if we do that, we can prepare for the next drought. This bond isn't going to help much for the current drought, but when we get prepared, and there will be another one coming down the line, and we need to be prepared. This time, we were not.
This is California, trying to get its house in order. You are our congressman in Washington, D.C. I mean, do we look to the federal government at all for help in our situation here?
Yes, we should. In fact, several of us are proposing a similar proposal at the federal level that would include all of the western states, all of them in a severe drought, including Georgia, not on the west at all. Then it would be a water plan that has the same elements that this bond act does. Conservation, recycling, new storage systems, all of those things need to be put in place. And if we do that, we can better prepare. And we're not going to, we've got climate change out there, and that's a very real problem all across this nation and around the world. But we need to get ourselves prepared both at the state level. The federal government has a very important, critical role in assisting the state, because many of these projects are, in fact, federal projects.
We're going to talk about it a lot as November approaches. Can I end with a broad question?
Sure.
Maybe this is just for me.
Sure.
And you're so qualified. You were in the state assembly, state senate. You were our lieutenant governor.
Insurance commissioner.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you.
And deputy secretary at the Department of Interior.
I got to get the whole resume. It seems to me there are times when the initiative process, I am frustrated in that it's almost like a chance for the legislature to punt. I mean, this is many of us that are voting on this are not educated on this issue, and yet we will decide rather than our legislature responsibly making this decision.
Well, bond acts have to go to the voters.
Okay.
It's in the state constitution. There's no choice. If you're going to go out with a bond act, it has to go to the voters. But you're quite right about the initiatives. Often the legislature doesn't take up an issue, and somebody else picks it up and carries it, and it's usually often half-baked and has problems within it that the unintended consequences. They were never discussed, those issues. That's a problem, an ongoing issue. But we've had some very good initiatives also. So it balances out. But by and large, if you want to talk about an organization that's not getting the job done, talk about Congress.
Yes,
the legislature got its job done.
And we'll end one more time. No on the Delta tunnels.
Absolutely no on the tunnels.
Congressman, thank you very much for coming in. Come in
Thank you.
anytime. We appreciate it.